Hi, this is Lyle Levitt welcoming you to TribFest 23. I hope you're enjoying this weekend of big ideas and important conversations about the future of our state and our country. No matter who you are or what you believe, please be courteous and respectful to everyone around you. And no matter where you call home, thank you for being here. That's right, even if you're not from Texas, the Texas Tribune Festival wants you anyway.
Hey.
Wow.
Ah.
Hi, everybody.
Hi. I think we have a video. Is that correct? It's going to play or not? Are we done? We're done. Good. It's over.
Play.
Good. We were just backstage talking about our children's, and I was just telling them I have the straightest children ever. I do not know how that happened. Anyway, but I support them in their diversity. Anyway. So let's get going. This is going to be a live taping of On with Kara Swisher. I appreciate it. I've been looking forward to interviewing you. So let me get this straight. Are you retired now, like Rupert Murdoch?
Yeah, I'm retired. I'm out.
Yeah.
I don't know how that's going to go with that whole kind of organization now. And hopefully I don't know, hopefully it straightens up a little bit, but we'll see.
Yeah, I doubt it.
I doubt it too.
Doubt it.
I'm a little worried.
But you're hardly retreating. You continued to be vociferous in your critiques of fellow Republicans. You have a book coming out on Halloween, which I think is
called Renegade.
It's called Renegade.
On Halloween.
That's correct. Is that your new position, Renegade? Is that the?
I guess so. Yeah.
Okay.
I just think it's like let's just do things. Let's just talk. Let's tell the truth.
Okay, but do you know what Renegade actually means?
I got no.
No, I'm going to tell you.
Now.
The definition is a person who deserts or betrays an organization, country, or set of principles. It's not a nice word. The synonyms are traitorous and treacherous. To be fair, lower down in the definition is a person who behaves rebelliously in an unconventional manner. There is the Styx song for Renegade.
Yeah.
For older people, they know it. Oh, Mama, I'm in fear for my life from the long arm of the law.
It's pretty accurate, too.
Lawman, put an end to my running and so far from my home. There was a 1990s TV show I enjoyed by Lorenzo Lamas with a voiceover. He was a cop and good at his job, but he committed the ultimate sin and testified against other cops gone bad. Cops tried to kill him, but got the woman he loved instead. Framed for a murder, now he prowls the Badlands, an outlaw hunting outlaws, a bounty hunter, and a renegade.
Ooh.
Do you like that one?
Yeah, I like that one.
Lorenzo Lamas is.
That's better than how this started.
Yeah, exactly.
Betrayer, like turncoat.
And it's also a Jeep, just so you know.
I know that.
They're getting struck on right now. So explain what you think a renegade is.
Yeah, I think a renegade, it's like when I think of used to be my friend, John McCain. It's Maverick, right? Like just somebody that you can come out of that, I don't know, that silo that you get put in. And that happens whenever you join a political party. You always have this pressure to stay in a certain way and act a certain way. And I think a renegade or a maverick is somebody that's just like, you know what, I'm not going to do it. I've had enough. Mm-hmm. I've hit a point where it's like, in my cases, the consequences I've seen to this country have been too big.
Mm-hmm. So you didn't start off that way. You sort of were the the good boy, essentially, of the party in that regard.
I was a mainstream Republican.
Yeah.
And when you get there, it's, the thing is, you can either work as a team or you can work against a team. And so when we're there and I started in 2011 and kind of throughout kind of the early Boehner years, we were fighting against what you're seeing now, which is this kind of crazy Tea Party club. Mm-hmm. But it got worse, obviously, now. They're willing to go, as you're seeing a potential government shutdown and everything else. And so for me, it was like, well, let's all work together as a team. Let's try to push our agenda forward by taking 80% instead of pushing for 100. Uh-huh. But it got out of control. And really right around, it was getting out of control more every day, but 2016, 2017 is where it accelerated.
Right. So the book, I imagine, will scoop some of Liz Cheney's memoir, Oath and Honor, that's coming out, which is a different title. It's set to come out later this year. You two are, of course, the two of 10 House Republicans who voted to impeach Trump after January 6th. You also served on the January 6 committee together, and you've paid the price of not being in office anymore and not being in the House. Do you two talk often?
Some. We talked a lot, obviously, during the January 6th stuff. I mean, I will say Liz Cheney, there were so many people, I could go through every member of that committee and say, how they helped the committee or what they did well, what everybody's shortcoming was. Liz Cheney was dogged to get to the facts. And I think, and you could see this in her testimonies, her opening statements and stuff, she was just always in on it. So we would be in touch all the time. I mean, there'd be things that were coming out that she already knew about that we had discovered that we were, I was then going to find out in this committee meeting. So yeah, we're still in touch a little bit now, but she's obviously been busy writing and we have our own lives. But
so you don't have like a club?
We don't have a clique, no.
No,
but we do, there's a text chain that sort of still exists of all the people that voted to impeach.
Oh.
And this actually started with hey, initially I think we had 20 people on the chain, and then the people that didn't vote to impeach, we kind of got rid of them, and so we went through that way. You got misery and company a little bit.
What was on that chain?
What were the details?
Yeah.
Saucy details?
Yeah, I'm sure it wasn't saucy.
It was a lot of
Say please, go ahead.
It was just a lot of, why is Kevin McCarthy going down to Mar-a-Lago to meet with Donald Trump?
Right.
I can't believe this person's doing that. And it was just a lot of that. And, there'd be some discussions when we were all making a decision whether we'd run again or not. So, nothing
No dank
juicy.
memes. No.
What's that?
No, I'm not going to explain it to you. I'm not explaining dank memes to you. So talk about the trajectory of your role different from Liz Cheney's, because you are seen together. You were seen together on stage. What do you think you can do that she can't, and vice versa?
Well, I think we can both kind of feed off each other in terms of calling things out in the GOP and seeing how crazy it's become. She was a lawyer, and she is a lawyer. And so her ability to get into, when we were dealing with the January 6th stuff, to get into the facts, to say, okay, this actually constitutes, the violation of the law. This is something that is obviously seeming wrong. Let's find out more. She could develop that in a way I couldn't. I don't have the ability to do. I think where I would bring a strength is I was able to kind of keep an eye on what was going on in I'll call it right-wing media, but right-wing Twitter. And you'd see these conspiracy theories that were boiling up that I can tell if it's going to become a bigger conspiracy theory. The example is Ray Epps. Mm-hmm. And I remember sitting in the committee telling people, we've got to push.
Explain who Ray Epps.
So Ray Epps is, he's a guy that got caught up in the January 6th stuff. He looks like a Fed because he has a short haircut. So everybody has a short haircut, looks like a Fed, evidently. And there's a video where people...
say you look like a Fed.
Yeah, I mean, I was. But there's a video where people are, he's saying, we're going to go in the Capitol, and then people start chanting Fed, basically to CYA, cover their own backside. And then there's a point at the very beginning, or at the beginning of kind of the breach of the Capitol, where he whispers into somebody's ear. And that became a conspiracy theory that he is a Fed. He actually launched this insurrection, therefore it's the FBI. Well, the truth is, he was whispering into the guy's ear you don't need to do this. We have to keep this tame. And anyway, but that became the whole conspiracy to prove that the FBI was behind this.
Right.
And so I'd see these things grow, and I could call it out and say, as a committee, we have to take this on or we don't have to take this on. And and then also when I did the DOJ hearing, the Department of Justice hearing, was the 5th hearing. And that's where it came out that Donald Trump said, just to the DOJ, just say the election was corrupt and leave the rest to me and the Republican congressman, which if you think about that is such a sad and amazing statement. It's just take a veneer of just say it's corrupt and then we can do the rest. I think it was important for a non-lawyer to lead that hearing because I don't know a lot of law terms and so we wouldn't get messed up in that.
Okay, so but what about the other prominent Republicans, the so-called Trump resistance, the never Trumpers? Should there be an alliance of those? Is Chris Christie your mascot, for example?
I'm like a new Chris Christie fan, actually. It's been pretty interesting.
Were you not an old one?
Initially, no. We were pretty competitive because you remember in 2016, he was the first to come out and endorse Trump.
Right. I remember.
Yeah, I think we all do.
Yeah.
But he's become, he's the one out there telling the truth, and I give that to him, and I'm very supportive of him. Here's what I think from an alliance perspective needs to happen. Yes, the old, kind of the godfathers of Never Trump, the sons of Never Trump, the newer ones, like me, the people that are yet to come, and frankly, Democrats, left wing, everything, we have to have an uncomfortable alliance on democracy. Because this is a moment. Sure, there's a lot of things that divide us, and like there's a lot of issues like tax rates, whatever else, all these issues. We can discuss those for a long time if we have a democracy. And my concern right now is truly that we're at a point where we could see democracy fail. And so while somebody on the left and right may not agree on any issue at all, if they agree on democracy, that's where I think we need to see an uncomfortable alliance. It's not going to be easy, though. I'm not pretending like that's an easy thing.
So only two of the thing is you need power to do this, presumably. So only 2 of the 10 House Republicans who voted to impeach Trump remain in Congress, Dan Newhouse and David Valadao. Mitt Romney seems to be giving up, which we'll go into later. Going anti-Trump has been political suicide.
It is, yeah. It is. And
is the sacrifice worth it or just a waste?
I think it's worthy because let me answer that just from an individual perspective. If I would have just tried to survive and become, voted against impeachment, stayed kind of like, we'll call it marginally pro-Trump, and somehow I survived through that, for me personally, and I'm not trying to say this to sound like anything but just the truth, I couldn't look at myself in the mirror. And we were talking about having young kids, and my kid's 20 months old, and I couldn't imagine him reading in a history book and reading his last name and being ashamed about it, right? And I have a lot of colleagues that I don't think can say that they're, as long as their last name's not Smith or something, then you can blend in as a kid. But if you have a unique last name like Kinzinger, this is going to be a moment in history you read about. So for me, I couldn't do it.
But the person who replaced you did shift to Trump, was quite centrist.
Yeah.
And then his father was definitely anti-Trump.
Yeah, LaHood, Darren LaHood.
Why would someone do that? Put yourself in his shoes.
Yeah.
Because he won, and he's in your seat.
Yeah.
Right now.
It's survival and it's identity. All of us struggle with identity in our lives, like what am I, who am I? Am I a congressman, or am I a father, or am I a journalist, whatever that is. And you have to find your identity as something beyond your job. Well, when it's something like Congress or Senate, House or Senate, anytime you go into a room, by the way, you're the center of attention. And imagine that was my life for 12 or 13 years. Anytime you go, unless you're with the president, like you're the person everybody's looking at. That can be addictive. That power can be addictive. That attention can be addictive. And it's not addictive in a way that you ever get satisfied. You need more of it. And so when that becomes your identity, and all of a sudden now you're faced with an existential crisis to your identity, I tell you, the thing I have learned in all this is people fear losing their membership to the tribe, and they fear losing their identity more than I think they even fear death. And I think that's what a lot of this is. People, and then over time, you can convince yourself that what you're doing is right. You can convince yourself of it. And once you get this far in, 7 years of Trump, it is impossible now to turn and say, okay, I'm now against Trump. Why? Let's think of Vietnam. There was a point at which we lost 10,000 men in Vietnam, and it's like, we can't leave now, we've already lost 10,000 people. Then we lost 20,000, the sunken cost fallacy. If you spent 7 years of your life justifying Donald Trump and everything he's done, to now turn against that, you have to admit to yourself that for 7 years you were enabling corruption.
Well, what's the price? I mean, you talked about the idea of losing your identity, but you all have gotten death threats, threats facing your lives, your families.
Yeah.
Has that stopped?
Yeah, because they don't know where to find me anymore. So I think that's helped.
Your name's on the marquee out front. So
look at the comments. You'll see them there. Adam Kinzinger, resident of. I'm a Texan now, too, by the way, just so you guys know. Yeah.
May I ask why? No insult.
Because I'm tired of winter.
Okay.
Honestly, I'm tired of winter. So we live in the Houston area now.
Okay.
Oh, my Houston peeps. Where were we going? Oh, the death threats. Look, I mean, it was, when you tell somebody that you have a 24-hour security detail, like, it sounds cool until you get one. Mm-hmm. And then, it's things like, okay, meeting my friends at the bar after votes, for instance, in Congress. Now I have to take into account I have 3 security people with me. And, what does that mean for their night? Everybody's now looking at us. So that was an inconvenience. Having a cop sitting outside my house because my wife and kid were there is an inconvenience. We got letters that said, my wife got one that said, "You're married to the devil," literally, and we find it blasphemous that you named your son Christian, the son of the devil. And you get that stuff, or like wishing that she would be killed by traffic and my son would be killed too. These are real people that would send this stuff. Mm-hmm. And I'll tell you honestly, I didn't think it affected me until I got out of Congress and I got time to just get some distance. Mm-hmm. And then you realize the toll it took. And I describe it as like being in war. You can operate if you're in the trenches. By the way, we think of the people in Ukraine fighting for their freedom today, the toll they're going to have to take. When you're fighting, you can do it. When the guns go silent is when you have to deal with the toll it took.
Do you still have that happen?
No, I don't get the threats as much because, again, truly they don't know. You can't send something to my office.
Right.
But I certainly am conscious of the fact that at any given time there are a number of people that would kill me if they met me. That's a reality.
Did you ever reach out to any of them? Because sometimes they put their phone numbers on it. I've noticed when I get in letters, they always have their phone numbers. I'm always like, all right. And I call them. I'm like, hey girl.
Hey, what's up?
They always apologize.
They always do. No, the only people that would contact them are the police, Mm-hmm. But it's interesting. So sometimes I would see somebody out in public that I knew had sent, maybe this wasn't a death threat because that would be different, but they've sent like really mean stuff or whatever, and that I knew, and then they were so nice to you in person. Now, I will say to the credit of the American people still, I can say one time in probably 13 or 14 years that anybody has ever come up to me in public and either yelled or said something extremely rude.
And that was Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Yeah, that's her, yeah. I can't believe she's a real person. I just still, yeah, true.
Well, let me introduce you to Lauren Boebert.
Yeah, true.
She's in the audience right here.
Yeah. She's going to be removed by security soon.
Everybody.
Yeah.
Give her a lot of space. She has things to do. I came here from San Francisco, and I was with someone, and we were sitting there having coffee, and we're like, we kind of like her a little better for doing. But we're from San Francisco.
Yeah, true.
You can marry a goat there. Which she might. Sorry, I'll stop with the Boebert jokes. When you think about this, what's happening here, you have zeroed yourself out of politics then. Do you think there's a political future for you?
I don't know. And honestly, I'm saying this genuinely, I don't really care as much. I care from the perspective of, because if there's no future for somebody like me, it means that kind of broader movement of sanity, doesn't have room. Mm-hmm. There's nothing about me right now that's plotting or planning my return to politics, although I'll accept the fact that it very well may happen. But thank you.
In what capacity?
What's that?
In what capacity?
I don't know. Definitely not the House again. So it would have to be something, I don't know, governor, senate, or president. It would have to be, that's the only options left because I'm not running for city council. And, but with my Country First movement, we've been able to stay very engaged in fighting for sanity among the GOP, sanity all over the place. I feel politically homeless though at the moment. I still call myself a Republican because I'm not going to give up that title, but I haven't voted Republican in 3 years. I probably will not vote Republican at all in the next election, and I feel politically homeless.
But the base of the party is very far away from you.
Yeah.
So what if the issue is, in fact, the voters? A New York Times deep dive poll in August found that nearly 40% of Republicans are unwavering MAGA Trumpers.
Yeah.
And that the moderate establishment, also known as the Never Trumper camp, people like you, make up less than 15% of the party. That's fewer than 1 in 8 Republicans. These establishment voices are overrepresented in D.C., New York, media circles, centrists. Thinking they matter, do they matter in this Republican Party?
I think it matters in the extent that it's a message that has to be out there. Look, if Donald Trump, which everybody's innocent until proven guilty, right? Mm-hmm. When he goes to jail, I think like he deserves it. Let's just be honest. I've seen all this. He deserves every ounce of that. But when he goes to jail and people see all this evidence, could that make a difference? It's possible. You've seen around the edge some cracks in the GOP. But look, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like this. Well, we're not even the establishment anymore, by the way. MAGA is now the establishment. I'm not going to pretend like sane voices are going to somehow come out and win anytime soon. I don't think they are. And I think you're seeing a massive political realignment happen. But I know this. We never predicted Donald Trump actually running for and winning the presidency. Anything can happen, but we have to continue to be loud about it. And in my mind, we have to continue to fight for honor, for the right thing, for Ukraine. I mean, there is no cleaner fight.
So what do you, I'm going to get to Ukraine in a minute.
Okay.
What do you think motivates that 80, it's actually 86% now, that find Trump's message more compelling than yours?
So it's two things, I think. Number one is because the people they trust. So if you think of like this disparate world we live in where if you're on the left, you trust left voices. If you're on the right, you trust right voices. When Donald Trump, for instance, gets arrested and every other voice in that ecosphere that people trust is too scared to say that he broke the law and they say it's a witch hunt, of course they're going to rally around Donald Trump because everybody they trust is saying that he's a victim here. Because that's what happens when you don't have leadership.
Sorry.
You know, you have people that change, and so you have no leadership, and so of course they're going to love Donald Trump. I think the other thing is he really plays well to base emotions. How many of you guys are on, probably all of you to some extent, are on some email list somewhere that now you get 500 things a day that are trying to raise money? Well, if you end up on a Republican email list, and this was something I wish we could have flushed out more in the committee. We didn't have time to do it, really. Which is between Election Day and January 6th, the radicalization that occurred because of the fundraising emails. We had witnesses that came in and told us they were writing knowingly false emails to raise money. They'd have to write 15 a day, and it had to raise whatever, $20,000 per email. And so if you go on and your email constantly says, Pelosi's trying to kill you, all this stuff, that radicalizes. And we have played with the dark force of fundraising through fear, and it's gotten out of hand. You can do that for a cycle or two. You can't do that for a generation, and that's what's happened.
So former Republican strategist and also an ever-Trumper, Stuart Stevens, wrote in his 2020 book, It Was All a Lie, that racism was an animating force, but the GOP has always lurked in the Republican underbelly. Do you agree with him?
To an extent. I think if you say right away, is there overt racism? No. Is there class, I guess, anger? Yes. Is there in the Midwest, for instance, or in anywhere besides basically the coasts, do people feel left out? Yes. But I do think, and again, I wouldn't put it as a majority of Republicans, but I do think race plays an issue in some of this stuff. Look, if we had a lot of immigration, but it was coming from Ireland, do you think people would be as upset? Truthfully, I don't. I don't think they would be.
Back in the 1910s.
Yeah, well, they were back then.
Yeah.
But I think some of the animating issues with, okay, why are we, and by the way, we need better border security. We have to be clear about that, you know, but we also need real immigration reform in this country. But I do think some of what can animate the anger, not the concern, the anger, is because the people coming here aren't white. And I think that does animate some of it.
So where do you think this base shifted? Because it did shift over time, and it was actually long time and then short, because some research draws a line from the Tea Party with its conspiracy theories about Obama and his birth and its populist fervor straight to MAGA and Trump. You had a front row seat to this.
Yeah.
You won your seat in Congress in a Tea Party sweep in 2010. You were backed by the movement, considered one of its rising stars.
How times change.
Well, I know. Talk to me about, one, your own accountability in this, because when you start down that road, it can go very fast, especially when fueled by social media and certain media, different medias. What's your accountability in this, and what do you think the Trump and the Tea Party have in common?
So it's a great question, and I spend a lot of time in the book, called Renegade, by the way.
Renegade.
I just didn't pick that up.
With Lorenzo Lamas.
That's right, Lorenzo Lamas. I talk a lot about
Really
this.
good show.
I'm going to have to go look it up now.
Yeah.
So.
Now that you are one.
You buy the book, you get a free DVD.
Yeah.
of this.
You and Liz Cheney roaming the Badlands.
Yeah, there we go. That's a good book.
I would bring her to the Badlands. I'm just thinking, yeah, I'd bring her to the Badlands.
So, well, first off, look, one of the things I have the ability to look back on now is to see, again, it's what I just kind of talked about, you know, in the early kind of 2010s, yeah, we were playing with fire a little bit. We thought the fire was controllable. Mm-hmm. It's like this permanent underground fire in a coal mine in Pennsylvania that every now and then they puncture and it pops up and it feeds it more. And it's like, that's kind of what it was. And I can look back and see that. And I can look back and see my role. Now, I can say with a straight face, I didn't play a lot on fear, because one of the things I learned early is if you actually speak and try to more inspire people, or, you know, I had Hillary Clinton in front of the committee on the Benghazi stuff, and I actually asked professional, nice questions instead of berating her. And you get more attention and I think more effect with that. But I'm not going to pretend like we did, you know, I wasn't part of kind of using that fear to raise money, which became so important to build the team. And so I do play a role in that, and I accept that. And I should have voted. And look, here's the other thing I'm ashamed of. I voted against the first impeachment, and I did that against like everything that was screaming inside of me, saying, Adam, you know, this guy obviously violation, particularly on foreign policy issues, particularly with an ally that needs our help. And I voted against it to survive. So that is to my shame.
What was the moment you did? What happened? Where you were going to do it and all your aides said you can't, or?
Yeah, I don't want to say I was ever at the point where I was convinced I was going to do it, but I was wrestling with it. And, well, Nancy Pelosi gave me an out when she basically said we have to get this vote done before the turn of the new year. Because, and the reasoning was, if we do it next year, it's an election year. I think it was a pretty lame excuse, honestly. But that gave me and others the ability to say, well, she's rushing this. And boy, this is such a serious moment, we can't rush it. That's not why I voted no. Even though I said it, I didn't vote no because of that. And in all my statements, I'm like, I'm very concerned about what happened in Ukraine. I voted no because that was an out. And that's to my shame. I don't dwell on that in my own heart. But and you see that all the time.
Were you ever close to doing it? Like when John McCain did the health care, remember when he goes?
Yeah. Was I ever what?
Close to being a maverick like that.
I've been close, yeah. I was close there too. No, and I'll say, again, it's with that moment, you just, I see it now, and it gives me an ability, and I try to call this out on all of my social media. The day before the second impeachment, I thought we were going to have 25 people vote yes. Some of those, Mike Gallagher, Nancy Mace, right? Others that I thought were going to vote yes. By the time impeachment came, I was surprised we got 10. Because the thing I noticed the difference is those that were concerned about their reelection were the ones that ultimately voted no. And every one of them did not vote no because they didn't think Donald Trump did anything wrong. They voted no because they found a technical excuse to vote no on. I've done that 100 times. They do it 100 times. And I just want to give that as a tool to you. When you find somebody giving a technical excuse, it means they're violating what they think inside.
Did you talk to them about that?
Yeah, I basically went till I was blue in the face talking to people about it.
And what about when you voted against impeachment the first time?
Oh, how did I feel about it?
Yeah.
Well, I felt like garbage. I mean, honestly, I felt like that. And maybe that was part of the reason I became so determined on the second time. Because, so here's a little personal story. When I got back from Iraq, it was in 2009, and that's when I announced I was running for Congress. And I said in a public, in my announcement in front of, I think, 8 people, by the way, oh, how times change. I said, look, if I am going to ask people to die for this country, which I will have to take those votes as a member of Congress, I have to be willing to give my life, to give my career for the same cause, for the country. Now, I thought that would be like a vote to reform Social Security or something that would, I'd get voted out of office. And no, it ended up being a defense of democracy. But I think that stuck with me to my shame after the first vote and to my excitement, the second one.
What did your wife think of that vote?
She was very supportive. You mean the first one? Mm-hmm. There wasn't much on that. I mean, we were dating, and I think it was kind of whatever you got to do. We talked probably a little about it. I didn't talk to a lot of people just because I felt sick about it. The second one, she was totally supportive. I mean, she lived, with me in the office with the gun out, and she's half mile away at an apartment thinking there's a chance I might not make it through this on January 6th.
Right. So talking about where we're going, let's move on to the presidential election coming up, 2024. I know you've said you're the only person, I think it's the only person you'd not vote for more than Trump is Satan, by the way.
I said the only time I'd vote for Trump is if his opponent is actual Satan.
Let
Maybe.
me make an argument.
I might go third party then, I don't know.
Satan can be very charming.
Maybe, yes.
So Satan is real Satan.
Yeah, real Satan, not like fake Satan, like real Satan. Maybe I'd vote for Trump. Other
Right.
than that, no.
Probably Satan's not real, but okay. Republican voters don't share your sentiment. Trump is acting like he's de facto candidate, which he seems to be. Who in the primary field, and it's a wide open one, can actually defeat him? Or is it, again, an exercise in futility? They will all back him later, by the way, with the exception probably of Chris Christie.
Yeah, I think the
Asa
exception
Hutchinson,
of
yeah.
Chris Christie and Asa Hutchinson and Will Hurd, I think, look, the only possible way Donald Trump could lose is, again, if he goes to trial, all this stuff comes out, and it has an impact around the edges, and this is the big problem, if everybody else but one person drops out. And that's the problem. I mean, if you look right now, let's say it's, the latest in New Hampshire, I think he's at like 38. Mm-hmm. Nationwide, he's like 58 or whatever. Imagine if there's only one opponent, and it's now 58-42, all of a sudden you have a horse race. The problem is, it's not that easy, because if Ron DeSantis drops out, probably a good majority of those people go to Donald Trump, because DeSantis is Donald Trump, just a different version of him. Mm-hmm. So I think, look, it's going to be tough. I think there is a path. I don't know what that path is, but I've also learned there are times I've predicted things that just completely didn't come true, and I hope this is one of them, but it appears that it's going to be Donald Trump. And that's why I stress so much the importance of this, like, what I call this uneasy alliance, because to my fellow Republicans that are as concerned as I am, look, regardless of how you feel about Joe Biden's policies, and I think his policies have actually been decent, but regardless of that, we can survive Joe Biden. We can't survive Donald Trump. We cannot, as a country, survive it.
So the thing is, they will all back him afterwards.
Yeah.
You think any of them will break away?
No, I don't. I mean, it's because you see it in the, like Nikki Haley, for instance, has a good debate where she calls out Ramaswamy, and she does, and then in the next time she's on some TV show talking about how, of course, she'll support Donald Trump over Biden's failed policies. And it's like, look, here's the thing I can sympathize with is, in order to have a chance to win the Republican primary, you have to say that. The problem is, when people keep saying that, is the reason Donald Trump's in the lead. When Tim Scott says it, that Donald Trump is a victim of DOJ witch hunt, and you believe Tim Scott, you're going to believe then that Trump is the victim of that. So it's a catch-22 that I can't give these people advice out of. I just know, for me, when I made the conscious decision, like, it's the end of my political career, but I feel good about it, like, that brought peace to me that I don't think these folks can have.
Because they want something else. We're taping this the Friday before the second GOP debate. Trump is not going. He's going to Detroit, apparently. What are you watching for in the debate? Who is the highest stakes? If something happens and there is a lane that suddenly opens up, what are you watching for, and who is it most important?
So I think that it's basically...
It's a pretty good debate. The last one was actually interesting.
It was interesting, actually.
Yeah.
And I think there's kind of two issues at play here. Number one is, okay, first off, it's going to be Donald Trump. Now, let's say it's not Donald Trump. Anything can happen. Boom. Now, what's the lanes? And what are the lanes? The lanes are either there's the Trump person, and then there's the not Trump person. So you'll see a fight over here among people. Chris Christie's kind of in his own thing where he's like just kind of lobbing bombs at everybody correctly, I think. But you'll have a fight between Nikki Haley, Tim Scott, whoever else. That's the non-Trump lane. DeSantis, I guess, although I think DeSantis is completely floundering. But then among the Trump people, this is the question, is who's number two? And is it going to be Vivek? Is it going to be DeSantis or whatever? Because he's such a charlatan.
Yeah.
I can't respect somebody that a year ago writes in their book that Donald Trump is a threat to democracy, and then a year later is on stage being the only one raising his hand saying he would pardon Trump, and I'm so proud of it. You do not You do not change your mind that quickly if you're a normal human being and if you're actually telling the truth. I have real disdain for Vivek because I think he's a good speaker and he's dangerous in my mind.
Okay. All right. But for on that stage, so you have Vivek and who else is over there?
I think that's going to be, it'll be like him, and I guess to an extent we'll see if DeSantis can make a comeback. And I think that's kind of, I can't even remember who all's in the race at the moment as I'm thinking. I think they're going to be the two contenders for Donald Trump falls out, they get the Trump vote. And then over here it's going to be Tim Scott. Let's see if he's a little more aggressive this time. Let's see if Nikki Haley can hold her own like she did last time. She actually did pretty good in the debate last time. And let's see what Chris Christie says. And I think that's what I'm kind of watching for there. I don't know if like Asa and the governor of North Dakota are going to be on the stage this time or not. Probably better if they aren't.
Right. So he's skipping the debate. And you said he's, quote, the first one scared to death of Chris Christie. He's going to wipe the floor with him. I would say the floor was unwiped during that debate. Why?
Why?
Were you surprised? I was surprised. I've interviewed him. He's quite good. He's good now.
Yeah.
What happened in that debate with him?
In terms of what? In terms of like...
He wasn't very aggressive. He wasn't very...
Oh, yeah. Well, I think there were a couple points where he was, but I think... So I had talked to him actually somewhat after the debate, and he had made the point, and I heard this from other people, it was hard to judge any audience reaction in that because it was so big. He said, when you hear on TV boos or cheers, you can't hear that from the stage. And politicians, naturally, we feed off of a crowd, and I think you can get your energy from that. But I also think in 5 minutes or 8 minutes, however long you have to speak, there's two things you wanted to do if you're Chris Christie. Number one, you want to have a positive vision, your vision. You know, you want to go after Joe Biden to an extent and go after Donald Trump. And I think he prioritized those two. So we'll see what happens this time. But I'll tell you, the guy has nothing to lose, and I think he knows that.
Right, and so just go for it. Have you told him that?
Just go for it. I mean, and plus, if you're not going to win, I got to tell you, there's nothing better than just saying the truth about Donald Trump. It's so liberating when you can finally do it.
You have a new Substack.
Yes, correct? I do. Okay. As of yesterday.
As of yesterday.
New Substack, yeah.
And the first column you did was called the Politics and Punchability, which you said Ron DeSantis is doomed by his own face. Now, you're using a metaphorical...
Yes, don't go punch people, for real.
Right, and thank you for not having any women on that list. That would have been distasteful. But you had a bunch of people. You had Tucker Carlson, obviously. You had a bunch of... Who else did you have on? I think... Did you have Vivek?
Yeah, there's Ted Cruz, for sure.
You had Lawrence O'Donnell. You had a bunch... What was your point of punchability?
You guys know what a punch me face is,
I know what it
right?
is, yeah.
So it's weird because if you look at politics, like, whoever has a punch me face never gets elected president anyway for some reason. It's like the old test of like, would you have a beer with this person?
Right.
And for some reason, jerkery or asshattery or whatever is distilled in somebody and it comes out in their face and you can just tell. And so the point isn't to encourage people to go punch a politician. Please don't punch your neighborhood politician. But it is to say, if you had to punch a politician, right, and you know, who would it be? And Ted Cruz would top that list, I think. Right. And Tom Cotton. Also, I didn't include him, but.
Okay. Yeah. I wish you would use ass-hattery versus punchability. Just okay, I like that. But talk about that idea of DeSantis. You mentioned him; he's floundering. It's because he has a punchable face?
Well, he has a punchable face.
Because he was the number one. He was the Scott Walker.
Yeah, but his punchability and punchable faceness is a side note too. And I think the reason he has a punchable face is because he's just not. You know that what he's doing is performing. I mean, for instance, again on Ukraine, he was pro-Ukraine when he was in the House. Now he's like out here being this like irate Tucker Carlson light. He was pro-vaccine, then he was against it because it became popular. Like, this is what I disrespect in politics more than anything, is people that don't really believe things and change. You got to play that to an extent. I'm not naive, and that's part of a republic. But if you're getting rid of your core principles, that to me just makes you punchable. Because, like, you can be the furthest left-wing politician or the furthest right-wing politician. If you truly believe what you're saying, I respect that, even if I'll debate it. It's when you become a charlatan and if you notice, everybody on that list was a charlatan.
So you think he has a chance to recover? He's in the second place.
I think if his chance is if Trump goes out soon, which is not likely, but if Trump goes out soon, I think he still has that aura of being Trump's backup. It'll be him and Vivek Ramaswamy fighting this out, but I think that's his chance. Every day that goes by, though, I think there's much less. I think he's going to have a hard time even surviving in Florida at this point because, I mean, look at the whole thing of his politics of immigration. You know, like, I'm going to start flying people and deporting them. I think it was deporting people out of Texas on Florida's dime, which is dumb. And at the point when Florida gets hit by a hurricane and they're begging for people to come work to recover the state. I mean, this is all stuff that, like, let's think through. And you can play base politics for a little bit, but eventually I think people see through it.
Right, okay. You mentioned Trump's legal woes. Big open question here. The former president has 4 indictments, the hush money case, documents case, election interference in Fulton County. He's a total of 91 felony counts. If he's convicted...
And he's officially a rapist.
Yes, that is true.
Yep.
Sorry to leave that one out. If he's convicted, will that ever stop him? I'm going to make the point, we're sitting in Texas where you just saw your attorney general come back and acquitted, and voters are not at all bothered.
Look, I don't...
Oh, sorry. Whoa. Sorry, did I get that wrong?
Some voters.
Some voters. I'm sorry. Okay. His voters. Not Austin. Okay, got it.
Look, I think what happens, so if he gets, let's say he gets convicted, I don't think it makes much of a difference in the GOP. Mm-hmm. And again, I think the reason, yes, it's like this rally around the flag, but everybody that has a chance to say the truth is sitting around like too scared to say it. And so, again, you naturally believe if all these people I trust are saying it's a witch hunt, it's a witch hunt. And so then you're going to rally against the guy that's being witch hunted. But if he's convicted, he does not win the general election because there are still enough Americans, over 50%, what do you need, 53% probably with the Electoral College as it is, that will not vote for Donald Trump because of that. I still have deep faith in the power of democracy and this republic in a general election. Primaries, not so much, but in a general election, I do. But I don't say that so that to my Democratic friends to say, you guys can just chillax for a while because we're going to be fine. This is a tight race between Biden and Trump right now. Last poll had Trump up 1 point. Don't take this for granted.
So why do you think that is? There's a lot of talk. If the race is presumed to be Trump versus Biden, a lot of talk recently among media elite about the need for Biden to step aside, his age, among other things. I did a whole panel on it this week on the show. Do you have a point of view on whether Biden is the right candidate to go up against Trump, or should Democrats get someone else?
Well, I don't know. I think he's got every right to run again. And I'm going to say this. Look, I don't necessarily agree with everything he's passed. But he has actually been one of the most effective in terms of passing things as president. I mean, I can proudly say I was the only Republican, I think, that voted for the CHIPS Act. That was an important piece of legislation. The infrastructure bill, his support for Ukraine, and thank God he announced ATACMS today. I think that's important. So from a successful perspective, he's been successful. And so I'll leave that to the Democrats because I think there's going to be, a primary within the Democrats would be very brutal because there's going to be, it may be quite damaging. But I'll say this, which is don't discount people when they say they're concerned about Biden's age, because I think when you discount that, you do it at your own peril. Mm-hmm. Because it is a concern I hear from Republicans, yes, from independents, yes, and Democrats.
And Trump, is that the same concern you hear about Trump? Only 3 years younger?
Trump's just psycho.
Okay.
I mean, honestly. But no, the funny thing is they're the same age. They're also younger. They're close, right?
3 years.
Okay, and they're younger than Romney, who looks like he's 24. I mean, that's what good living does for you, I guess. But
yes, he's a handsome man.
Yeah.
And I'm saying this as a lesbian. He's indeed a handsome man. So.
He must be really handsome.
Not that handsome. Right. So there's a lot of talk about third-party candidates. Do you see that happening?
I don't know. I think it could. I'm concerned about it. Like, here's my view on the third party thing is The best time to do it is when you have two candidates that are kind of the same. So you think back of like Clinton Bush, when no matter who won, Clinton or Bush, kind of the country would still be in the same trajectory. That's when you can play around with third candidates or third parties. The problem is that's when they don't have any traction. I am really concerned that a third party, no labels ticket, for instance, is only going to pull more votes away from the Democrats than Republicans.
Would that be helpful for someone like you or Liz Cheney?
No, I don't think so.
No. She said she'll leave the GOP if Trump wins in 2024. If Trump wins in 2024, would you?
Yeah, as I mentioned earlier, I haven't voted Republican in a few years, but I'm unwilling to let them run me out of my title right now.
Okay. You also been highly critical of the media in interviewing Trump in this race. You were frustrated with CNN's interview, as were many, conducted by Caitlin Collins. More recently, you spoke up after Kristen Welker moderated a conversation with Trump for Meet the Press. The last one was not live, was accompanied by context sections aiming to refute Trump's claims later on the website. I thought that was problematic. How do you think the media should cover the Trump? Because I think you can't not interview him if he's...
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. You can't not interview him, but I also think, like, he is an insurrectionist that tried to overthrow the government. And so, while I don't think you can ignore him, because he is the Republican, half the country probably is going to vote for him, I think things like... So Kristen's interview was actually not too bad. She did a good job. The problem I had with it was the fact-checking was on the website later. And if I think is there a moment to call him out directly, to print on the factual differences? It's one thing if a politician says something different, like, I voted against raising taxes and maybe he voted for it once, and, that's one thing. When you say, like, I'm going to pardon the January 6 people, January 6 was a peaceful day, this kind of stuff, that's a whole different level. So as a First Amendment advocate, I'll leave that to the press, but I'm also going to exercise my anger, frankly, when, for instance, I have a contract with CNN, and I made it known when they had the big town hall, because it's like you're putting in front of a reaffirming audience these lies. And I think that's the piece, is how do you fact check that? If fact checks even matter, which I don't know.
Is it possible?
I don't know.
It is.
Oh, it is possible to fact check, yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to get that interview.
Yeah, you should.
Yeah,
That'd be great.
just a sec. Just give me a few more minutes, okay? I would. I want to do it at Mar-a-Lago with velvet ropes.
I bet he'd love that.
That's how you
go
get
really
him.
well.
Give
I'll
him
pay
the
for a
velvet
ticket
ropes
on
at
that.
Mar-a-Lago, and suddenly he feels safe. Anyway, let me do this very quickly. We're going to get to questions from the audience. Let me do a lightning round very quickly.
All right.
How do you think the Republicans are handling the looming government shutdown? You said on CNN we're headed towards it.
So
McCarthy
bad.
should be so bad. Okay, so bad.
So bad.
Like you, if he does bridge moderate Republicans and Democrats, he'll probably lose his job.
Right. Yep. If he ends up cutting a deal, which I think ultimately he'll have to do, he will have to fight. The Democrats should be extracting stuff from him because he will ultimately need them to save his speakership. But this, impeachment inquiry, I think, poisoned the well.
All right, very quickly. How do you deal with individual players grabbing things for themselves? Because that's what he's doing. He's dealing with 10 people who he says they want to burn down the House. I've
said to the so-called moderates in the GOP, you've got to play the same game because you're letting these 6 people run roughshod, and they're not doing that.
The proposed spending does include continued aid for Ukraine. Explain why there's such a resistance to military aid for Ukraine among Republicans.
Tucker Carlson, and because anything that is considered anti-West right now is kind of cool among some circles of the GOP.
Okay. What do you think? Do you think it's wise for the House to be pursuing impeachment investigation to Biden?
Not unless you have proof that something happened, and they don't have that, and they've made it very clear they don't have that. And so I said, by the way, a year ago when I was still in the House, I said, next year they're going to vote to impeach Biden every month. I was wrong. They waited a few months, but the pressure was too strong, and they have to do it.
And what does that reveal about the power in Congress, especially the power of Matt Gaetz's MAGA win?
It goes to show that if you're willing to burn the place down, you have the most power. It's like if somebody walks, I hate this example, but bear with me. If somebody walked into a room you were in and they had a gun, they're the most powerful person. Not because they actually have power, but because they're willing to use it. And that's what you have right now.
How long do you think McCarthy can hold on to his speakership?
Oh, this is going to be a tough one. I think, but I thought he wouldn't make it through the debt limit, so take that for what it is. He actually did. I don't think he's going to last more than a couple months unless he pulls a miracle. And the Democrats have to save his speakership, I think. And I don't know if they have the energy to do that,
Yeah.
the desire.
How much does Romney's departure from the Senate hurt
It
establishment?
hurts a lot. I think one of the biggest damages to the Senate was the loss of John McCain. I traveled with him, and it was he was like an American Secretary of State everywhere he went. And I think Romney, it's the same kind of loss.
All right, you say you want to keep your Republican name in name only. I guess you're a rhino.
That makes me a rhino,
Yeah,
right?
right, exactly. I got
Republican
it.
name only.
I can't stand that. I hate all these phrases. What are the 3 issues do you think the Republicans are focusing in right now, and what should the 3 issues be, besides John Fetterman's shorts?
Yeah, I am pissed about that, but
Oh, come on.
So what are the 3 things that they should be focused on? I
Yeah.
think.
I'm just saying, you're lucky I'm here in hard pants, but go ahead.
I think if I somehow could lead the Republicans and say 3 things, I'd say let's focus on reform of government, not just cutting government, reform government, make it 21st century, a strong national defense, and infrastructure, which actually I think all 3 of those are what used to be big Republican priorities.
What are they focusing on right now?
They're focused on impeachment, outrage, Disney, wokeism, and
John Fetterman's shorts.
and John Fetterman shorts. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just closing and then we'll get to questions. A lot of your political work is explicitly anti-Trump, but instead of always moving against something, you have to move for things. I think that was the strength of Obama, of Ronald Reagan, Bill Clinton. Articulate your hope for the Republican Party. It's my last question, or a third party, without naming Trump.
Yeah, my hope for the party is that there is a moment at which you lose so much, so that's just the raw thing, and the moral heart comes forward, and you say, what are our roots? What are we about? We're always for a strong federal government, by the way, and infrastructure. And my hope is that at some point that good-heartedness of people, which I think really exists in everybody, I think every day you battle in your heart between good and evil, and that goodness comes back, and they recognize that there is a role for this party. There's a role for both parties, but the role for the GOP is to go hold on, let's be cautious and think through here. We are far from that moment, though, right now.
So you'll remain renegade.
I'm going to stay a renegade.
Okay.
At least till the book's sold.
Yeah. At the end of that show, they caught the bad guy. They caught the bad guy, and the renegade stopped being
All right.
one. But that's fiction. So come on out for questions from the audience.
Afternoon, everyone. My name is Matt Ewald of the Texas Tribune, and here are some of your questions. Welcome to Texas. How would you theoretically approach running for office here, and what party would you run with?
Oh, if I ran? I don't know. Do Democrats have conservative Democrats in Texas? I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay. If I was advising the Democrats in Texas, it would be look for moderate to conservative Democrats on statewide runs. That's what I would say. You can love it or hate it. In terms of the GOP, I don't know, man. The fact that Ken Paxton got off was a little concerning. I actually thought they would nail him. And it's concerning. So how would I approach it? I would not approach it anytime soon. But
How do we get good people to run for office if they and their families could be faced with death threats and violence?
That's a legit question. Look, running for office can't anymore be about your own identity and your own ego. By the way, there is ego in it. Let's not lie. There was ego in it for me, everything. But I think there has to be, for good people, there has to be that intrinsic idea of I can make a difference. And I think you also have to recognize this is not a career. Because I think the second this becomes a career choice, you have to win and you have to stay and you'll do anything to win. I would encourage anybody to go into public service, but I would encourage you to do it with wide eyes and be willing to walk away, because there will be a time when you need to walk away. I probably would have walked away even without January 6th, because 12 years in Congress is a long time.
Why are the only Republicans telling the truth about Trump the ones who are not seeking re-election?
It was the same thing I had to face, which is, okay, again, I probably truly would not have run again anyway without all of this, because it had been a long time I'd been in the House. But if I did, and I looked at this, it's like, I can run and guaranteed lose, okay? What's that gonna do? Well, it's like somebody saying, I can charge and take that hill, I'm gonna die, but it'll be heroic in the history book someday, but you're still gonna die. So if it doesn't make a difference on that. And I also realized if I ran and lost, it would probably do more to embolden the Trumpers than just not running again. And frankly, I had a young kid and a wife that had had enough death threats, and I had enough of it all.
How concerned are you as a veteran about political extremism within the military,
Very concerned.
veteran, and law enforcement communities?
I am very concerned. Now, I don't want to say that to disparage anybody in the military, and I know you guys don't intend to. I was concerned after January 6th when every time I would see a military uniform, I'm in the military still, by the way, whenever I see a military uniform, all I thought about was January 6th and the Oath Keepers. That's a scary thing. When I've had friends of mine who are lieutenant colonels, 05s, that would, tell me QAnon theories, that's a concern. We cannot, start regulating how people think. We don't want to get there. But when there is overt white supremacy, or if there is overt anti-governmentism, when I joined the military, I had to affirm that I was not a communist or a member of a terrorist organization or any organization that sought to overthrow the United States government. We can expand that to include other things.
How bad do you think that is?
I don't think it's bad to the point where we need to be losing sleep over it, but I think as this cancer grows in society, it will also grow in the military. And my doomsday concern is that, let's say, I'm going to take theoretically 2024, Donald Trump loses, he gets on TV and says, they're stealing this election again. Your oath, ladies and gentlemen, is to the Constitution of the United States, not to this president. Defend the Constitution, defend me now. And all of a sudden, how many people in the military or in the police force are going to say, they are stealing this from Donald Trump, my oath is to the Constitution, therefore I'm going to fight to support Donald Trump. Look, if I thought the election was really stolen on January 6th, I would have been the first into the Capitol to destroy it, because that is my oath. I just happen to know it wasn't stolen. And this is the concern, is people are truly convinced this really happened.
Is the duplicity of members of Congress that you referenced a common occurrence on other topics? How frustrating is this to you?
Yeah, I mean, it's frustrating to an extent. If it's not a moral issue, if it's an issue of, like, let's say we're talking about, SALT deductions on taxes or whatever, something that's not deeply moral, but like, I understand people changing their views for their district. That's always been the thing, is like, do I represent the people or do I go and do what I think is right? I think it's a mixture of both. But there are people that change their views on a lot simply because they can survive a political thing, and that's frustrating to me.
Are you concerned about the rise of the Christian fascism movement
Yes.
in Texas?
I am a Christian, ladies and gentlemen. I want to make that clear before I answer this. I think there has been a massive failure in the pulpit. I think there has been a massive failure from church leaders. They have tried to convince people that Jesus and America are one and the same. They are not. It is very different. You can be a proud American all you want, but that is not the same as being a proud Christian or a Christian at all. I believe that Jesus taught people to love your neighbor, to help the poor, to be compassionate to immigrants. And
God,
I think
he's so woke. He's so woke.
I know, I am so woke. And I think Christian nationalism is a massive cancer on the church. My buddy, he's actually competing with us right now, but Russell Moore is a good friend of mine, and he's out here wandering around talking about this.
Did McCarthy make a strategic error by not populating the January 6th committee with members aligned with him?
Sorry, finish it so I don't
That was the question.
Okay, so did he make a strategic error? We have two MVPs on the committee. Mark Meadows, because his initial tranche of text woke us up to everything that was going on. And the second was Kevin McCarthy, because when he polled his members, I mean, you think about how different the January 6th committee would have been if every subpoena would have been debated, out in public, if all this stuff happened and they would have been constantly trying to destroy the credibility, it would have been very different. This was a flash in the pan, lightning moment that I don't think you've ever seen in Congress, and unfortunately, we'll probably never see something like this again. Yeah. So I thank Kevin McCarthy for that.
Yeah, he's so woke.
He's so woke.
So woke.
And by the way, I also want to say, the second he showed up in Mar-a-Lago on January 30th, he was like the ambulance, took the things, saw Trump, who was politically dead, and brought him back to life with that picture.
Should the candidates running on anti-government rhetoric be considered Confederates and barred based on disloyalty to the Constitution?
No, I mean, I think that's an area I don't think we want to breach. I think it depends. Now, if you're running saying, let's overthrow the government by violence and force, that's a very different thing than just anti-government. I get the 14th Amendment argument, and I'm in the middle on it, because on the one hand, I see, if it's the Constitution, like, we have to enforce that. On the other hand, I do worry that the second you enforce that, you create an even bigger problem. And it's better, in my mind, to defeat this cancer at the ballot box. But that said, yeah, I get the question. I don't think it's good to disqualify right now people from the ballots.
Last question. Both of you have spoken about being in defense of democracy. What can we do to save it?
You want to go first or me?
Wow. I do believe in the goodness of the American people, ultimately, even though we can be terrible. And I think more people are concerned about their kids, education, crime, making money, making a good living. I think less people are caught up in this mania.
Yeah.
That said, as someone who's covered social media and the tech companies, I think we have the combination of this with social media and the unlimited power of tech people has been devastating. So if I had to pick anything, it would be the regulation. And I'm not a big regulatory person, but there's been zero regulation on any tech companies.
Yep.
And I'm not talking about First Amendment. I'm not talking about free speech. It's basic privacy, power, and everything else. And I think that they've been, it's not their job, but they've been irresponsible. And the government has been particularly irresponsible in not regulating them.
By the way, when I got to Congress, like issues like privacy and data breach were #1 in 2011.
They were.
They're still there. We've done literally nothing on that. And that was a hugely disappointing
We
thing.
had a lovely meeting with all of them the other day, behind closed doors.
Yeah,
That
and
was
then
great.
solved nothing.
You imagine I love that one. Go ahead.
So, look, how do we defend democracy? Let me say this. I'm gonna guess most of you would consider yourself center to center left. Probably, maybe some center right. Whatever you are, make sure that you have a friend or somebody you know or love that thinks different than you, and listen to them. Now, that doesn't mean go become that person. It doesn't mean argue with them, although if they're open to arguing, that's always healthy. But just understand where they're coming from. Now, if you're in a family that's being torn apart by Donald Trump or whatever the issue is, don't talk about it. Don't let that destroy your family. I've been disowned by some of my dad's cousins because of this, and actually screw them. I actually don't care, honestly. But like, if you're gonna write me saying that I'm working for the devil, then I don't need you in my life. But anyway, but I would say to you, get to know somebody and recognize that everybody, even Al-Qaeda, by the way, thinks they're the good guy. Everybody thinks they're fighting the good cause. And so what's important is to see the heart in somebody that thinks differently, and it's hard to do. Trust me, especially with what I've gone through too, it's very hard to do. But I think if we can get to a point where we can accept and understand the differences and fight like hell to defeat the cancer, I think that's how you defend democracy. Don't put this whole burden on your shoulders.
Can I end with one last question? Donald Trump is sitting here. What would you then say to him?
Without punching his face, and I would never punch his face. I don't think there is anything I could say to him that would change his mind or make a difference. I would just express how my deep-seated belief that history will judge him as a complete stain on this country. And he needs to know that. Because I would love for him to see the light someday, but I think there's going to be a day when he is alone with his thoughts and realizing that his legacy is going to be complete garbage and he did nothing to help this country.
That doesn't seem very nice.
It's not nice.
Okay.
Everybody except Donald Trump deserves your sympathy.
Okay. Adam Kinzinger.
Thank you. Thanks for doing this, by the way. That was great.